Being in a position of leadership is both a blessing and an incredible responsibility. Not all people given positions of authority are good leaders, but I chose to interview a leader in my life that has exemplified solid leadership both through the leadership in the community and in my own life. I interviewed the lead pastor at Highland Baptist Church, the church I attend, Danny Gardner, because his leadership really inspires me to be a better leader and has helped me grow as an individual. A little bit about Danny Gardner before we get started. He and his family moved here from Lancaster, California, just a couple years ago in order for Danny to take over the lead position at Highland Baptist Church. And he has really transformed Highland into an incredibly thriving church full of people who are really intentional about discipling the people within the church. The first thing I asked Danny was about motivation and how he sees people being motivated. And the first thing that he said is that the secular workplace and the church kind of differ in people's motivations, because in the secular workplace, he said that people's primary motivation is money. And I think a lot of times that is true. People tend to hold jobs because they need to provide for their family, so they are motivated by their paycheck. But Danny said that in the church, for the most part, people's primary motivation is that they believe in what they're doing. In our text, Andrew Dubrin says that that is a really effective form of motivation, is when people believe that they're part of something big and they believe in what they are doing, they're going to be highly motivated to do their work well. And Danny says that he sees that in the church, that people know that what they're doing is for God. They know that they're serving God in their community and their work, and so that inspires them to grow and continue to push themselves to become better workers. You can learn from both good and bad leaders, and it really takes wisdom to draw things from both types of leaders. When I asked Danny about good and bad leaders that he's experienced in his life, one of the strong leaders that he cites a lot in these examples is his old lead pastor in California, Chris Johnson. And one of the quotes that really stuck out to me in my interview is that good leaders have to know where they're going and how they're going to get there. And that is creating that vision. And in both of our texts, both our Christian leadership text and the leadership principles text that we used in the class, both of them emphasize the importance of a good vision and a well-communicated vision in exemplary leadership. And Danny has really learned that from good leaders. He also says that good leaders have high expectations for themselves. And I think that those weak leaders that are heavy-handed don't have high expectations for their people because they don't believe their people can do their work. They're heavy-handed, they micromanage because they think they can do the job better than anybody else. And Danny says that these strong leaders have high expectations for their people because they believe they can do a good job. And they also have high expectations for themselves. He says that strong leaders outdo their people in their work ethic, and they are the first to do the hard job, and they are the first to do their job well. And that's what makes a really respected leader. These are on the screen here. These are just some other examples of weak and strong leaders that Danny cited. And then the next question that I asked him is, if we have a strong leader, well, then they need good followers. And what do good followers look like? And he gave me some really awesome answers that I hadn't really thought about. And the first thing that he said was that good followers think for themselves. He says that the best people that follow him and that he has seen follow other forms of authority are not afraid to ask questions and provide contrary input. And they also aspire to grow to become leaders themselves. And they're excited about what they're working for, and they're excited to do their job well, but they also understand their role. So in that he explained that good followers will provide that input and provide their opinion, but if the decision is made contrary to what they suggested, they're still going to do their work to the best of their ability and do the job well, even though it may not have been that idea. And then he also said an important portion of both being a leader and a good follower is that they don't gossip or slander about others. And I've seen firsthand in my workplace how destructive gossip and slander can be within a community. It really breaks down trust in the workplace, and I absolutely agree with Danny that people who don't do that are really unique and really valuable to a team because they help maintain unity and camaraderie within a team. The next thing I asked Danny was how he creates a safe space in order for people to present ideas and input. I myself feel very comfortable coming up to him and asking him questions, or asking if I can get more involved in something, or seeking more responsibility. And I feel like Danny does a really good job of creating that community. But it was funny when I talked to him that some people actually view him as a little bit reserved and unapproachable and a little bit intimidating, which I thought was interesting because I don't see him that way. But he says that even if you tend to have that personality, that more intimidating personality, you still have the potential to create those open communities and those open spaces for people to provide input. And he said that really just being intentional is really key. He tells people all the time that he's available, but then he also acts on it. He will ask people questions for their input. He'll schedule meetings with people. He'll check in with leaders of ministries and just ask them, hey, do you think anything could be done differently? Anything that you feel like is off? And he understands that some personality types need to be prompted more than others, and that he just really tries to be intentional about asking people for their opinions because he views them as valuable. The next thing we talked about was conflict and making changes and taking risks and things like that. And as far as conflict goes, the theme of kind of handling conflict for him is handling it directly and immediately. If it's conflict with him, he'll call that person, sit him down, and apologize for whatever he did and try to reach clarity and make peace. If it's with another person, like two other people, he'll call them into his office, sit them down. He really seeks for a restoration and genuine apology and forgiveness, and then he also will follow up with those people. And I think that that's a valuable tool that ensures that that restoration is real, because sometimes people will say things in front of their leader that they don't really mean just to kind of get out of the situation. And I think that following up and making sure that restoration was actually made is a really valuable tool as a leader. In terms of making changes and taking risks, I think that Danny is really skilled in making wise changes within the church. And he really said that how he makes those decisions has just really come over time, and that wisdom has come with time, and that good leaders are just intuitive, and that the need for change can either come from a problem or a lack of growth. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something catastrophic to need to make a change. Sometimes it just means a ministry isn't growing, and so you need to add something or take away something in order to make space for it to grow. An example of a way that he did this was they just recently changed the service times at our church so that we can even out the attendance in each service, and it's been going really well. But that risk also faced some backlash. He also said that when making changes, he tries to be really intentional about understanding what power he has and what power he's been given, and to defer to higher authority if it's not within his wheelhouse. But he also said that leaders who make no decisions are incredibly detrimental, even more so than people who make bad decisions. Taking risks, Danny and his family took a huge leap of faith when they moved out here. They took a pay cut. They came from a thriving church to a struggling one. They moved away from their community, and that was a huge risk to take. But it's been super cool to see how God has really blessed their family in this, and how our church has really been blessed by their ministry. Another small risk, like I mentioned before, was changing service times, and that people left, but more growth can happen now because of that. And it's kind of that concept of risk versus reward, that if it's a small risk, but you're going to get a huge reward from it, why not take that risk, even if it doesn't work out? But if it's a really, really big risk with only a potential of a small reward, then maybe it's not the wisest decision to make. He also said it's super important to just get input from other people, especially the leaders of ministries that those decisions make. And he really does a really good job of pushing other people to take risks and grow. The last two questions I asked him were about making ethical decisions and how his faith influences his leadership. And this is his quote that he said kind of as a theme of making ethical decisions. And I think that his family and the church really do operate this way. They do the right thing always, regardless of other people's opinions. And I think that's a really honorable trait of a leader, is to not be afraid of peer pressure. Integrating faith, he gave me 3 governing principles that he uses in his leadership. And that first one is peace. And they're all based on scripture. So this first one is Romans 12:18. So far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. And he really does that, trying to be peaceable with his people, and if there's conflict, to resolve it quickly and well. And then his second principle is forgiveness, that if people have wronged him or people have wronged other people, he's just so quick to forgive. And I would agree with him that it creates this community of trust and helps people grow, because there aren't grudges being held by him as the leader. And then this last one, he didn't really give me a word, so I added humility to this verse. And he talked about it in the concept of he has been entrusted this power as the pastor of a church by the chief shepherd, by the Lord, and that he really tries to remember that this power is not his. He's been given it for the time being, but that he's remembering in all the decisions that he makes that this power is really from God and it's not his, and so he should make his decisions based on that. I think it's a really honorable in the way that he leads. I think he exhibits a lot of principles that we've studied in this class, and it's been so cool to kind of integrate an effective leader and how many of those principles line up with things that I've been learning in my text. Thank you.